Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out. As part of my role with the PCI Security Standards Council, overseeing the certification programs portfolio, includes the PCI Forensic Investigators program. And I speak about that one in particular because we're going to be talking about the program quite a bit, and we have a PFI with us coming out here in a bit as well. So data breaches, fact of everyday life in the payments ecosystem. They happen, unfortunately, more often than any of us would like. So we have panelists today to share their experiences of how a data breach is dealt with from both the acquirer and from the PFI perspective. So we'll discuss the impact that a breach has on an organization and the parties involved and the different roles that they play in the process. First, we're going to look at some breach data, some statistics that have been on reported breaches so far in 2023. And now, PCI Security Standards Council, we don't receive the PFI reports themselves. This data comes from the reports. Breached entities, entities under investigation, number of cards or accounts breached. We don't see any of that stuff. We don't want to see it. What we do receive is an appendix to the PFI report. And you can go out and download the report template off of our website in the documents library. And it's Appendix A to the final PFI report if you're interested in looking at it. It includes sort of a summary of the investigation. What we're mostly concerned with or interested in from the council standpoint is, or are things like PCI data security standard requirements that were in place at the time of the breach, ones that were not in place at the time of the breach, which requirements may have contributed to the breach, and certainly those that are the cause of the breach. And we take that information and it helps us as we're developing our standards and then to show information like this here. So we'll get started off with here shown as the total reported breaches as reported by region. Asia Pacific is on the upswing, and it accounts for almost half of the breaches reported so far in 2023. And this data is current as of September 1st. I wanted to mention that. So it's pretty current. The number of investigations and reported breaches are way down this year, due in part to improved technologies, strengthened security posture, and adoption of standards like PCI DSS, P2PE, point-to-point encryption, tokenization, PIN, so on and so forth. So, and the work that a lot of you are doing contributes to, fewer investigations. We're not seeing as many breaches reported in large merchants this year, but we're seeing an increase in service providers and an increase in some regions. Card present versus card not present. It's clear which channels are the biggest targets lately, and this is nothing new. You want to keep in mind also that card not present does include things like mail order, telephone order, e-commerce, that kind of thing. And similarly, the card present, it would be misleading to try to show all of it, but where there's both. So basically, if there was card present, it wound up in the card present slice. But that also includes merchants and service providers where they take both. So just to keep it simple, if we were to only show those that had just card present, it would be like 10%. So, e-commerce is clearly the winner as far as breaches go. PCI DSS requirements, so far this year, there have been no instances of yes in place. So this is concerning. There's some partial yes, which is encouraging. It's discouraging that there's no in place yet this year. While PCI DSS requirement 4 in particular, and also 1 and 2, 3, 7, they look pretty good from a partial yes standpoint. Entities are struggling big time still with implementing at least half of these requirements or keeping them in place. So 6, 10, and 11 in particular, but all of these numbers really are way too high. So as long as this is the case, I guess the silver lining is that there's plenty of work for QSAs, PFIs, security practitioners, if that is a silver lining. We have a comparison chart here, 2022 to this year, and again, it's January to September. Folks are doing much better than this time last year. However, there's still way too much not in place, especially considering the number of reported breaches is way down from this time last year. Cause of breach so far in 2023. I'd like to see a wide spread here because we can really see what's going on. Requirements 6 and 11, vulnerability management, they're the most obvious culprits. Developing and maintaining secure systems and systems testing. Build it secure and validate it through testing. We're still not there yet. The contributors, even louder. So definite yes contributions from requirements 6 and 11, yet again, leading the way. We have 5 and 10 joining them. 1, 8, and 12, and the rest are also in there. So across the board, really, each PCI DSS requirement being not in place has clearly contributed to the breaches this year. And it really tells quite a story, but I could spend a much longer session dedicated just to talking about this stuff. But I just wanted to share kind of an overview of the state of things so far in 2023. I don't expect anything drastic to happen either way over the last quarter of the year, so this is the trend. There's not a whole lot that our PFI community can do about this. Their job is to come in, investigate, do some cleanup, and accurately report, and that's what they're doing. So really good job of that. The crowd that can make the biggest difference, I think, on seeing better numbers are right here, the security practitioners. Yes or no? Yes. So it's you guys. So we're going to take a deeper dive into some of this with our panelists to discuss the process that they follow and some of the challenges that they face during a breach scenario. So I'd like to welcome our PFI, David Ellis, with Security Metrics. I'm not sure which side they're coming out on, and Daniel Wright, our acquirer here with Bank of America. Hey guys. All right. We got a little bit of music. It was a little bit quieter than I thought. All right, so we've got plenty of time, but I'm going to go ahead and do away with the preamble stuff and just jump right into the questions. That way we have maximum time to share answers with. So I'm going to start out with Daniel, our acquirer. So as your role with Bank of America, can you describe for us typically, how you're typically made aware of a breach or a suspected breach, and generally how you respond, knowing that every case is different, but generally how you respond when you suspect or a merchant is suspected to have been breached?
Well, the bulk of our notices of incidents are received from the card brands. Actually, it's the issuing banks that identify the breaches, the incidents, most of the incidents, and then they file a report with the card brands. We also have a cyber intel team that will sometimes identify one of our merchants as being impacted. And then sometimes the merchant self-reports, which is always a good thing. So when we receive notification, we obviously, right away, we immediately notify the merchant and we advise them on the immediate actions that they need to take. And so the merchant will do their investigation and then we'll report back to the card brands what the merchant did to remediate vulnerabilities and to secure their environment, their payment environment. Sometimes the card brands will require a PFI forensics investigation to be performed. And we'll notify the merchant, and they in turn will hopefully contact Mr. Ellis here to start an investigation. Fortunately for us, I don't know if it's fortunate for David here, but fortunate for the merchant and us, the bulk of our investigations do not involve a PFI forensics investigation. In fact, right now, 87% of our active investigations do not involve a PFI.
Wow. Thank you for that. All right, so this is the acquirer's view. David, how do you guys get notified? At what point do you come in to the process, and what happens when you're first notified and you come in?
Sure. So for us, almost always the first notification that we receive is from the merchant themselves. they have been notified by either a self-detection, which is the best possible situation, or they've been notified by their bank, the acquirer, or sometimes even by the Secret Service or FBI. But we'll get that initial call, and then we have to determine with them if it is going to be a PFI investigation. And our numbers are very similar to Danny's, that 1 in 10 is a full PFI investigation, which is good for the merchant. The other 90% of the time, we're helping them in an incident response capacity where we can go in and we're doing a targeted investigation, looking for what happened, what the bad guys got, how they were getting the data out, and what we have to do to help the merchant to secure their system so it doesn't happen again.
All right, very good, thank you. Next question is back to Daniel. When a breached merchant has third-party service providers, payment processors, web hosting providers, how does that impact or complicate your role as an acquirer?
That's a great question. When a breach, we've noticed over the past couple of years an increase, a trend in that the cases that we are managing that involve a PFI forensics investigation, they're all third-party service providers. So the problem with that is that you don't just have one merchant that's impacted, you have multiple merchants. So the challenge initially is going to be we have to contact every single one of those merchants and engage them versus just having to contact one. The other challenge that can be a stickler or can delay the forensics investigation is that the card brands almost always want, when it's a third-party service provider is impacted or has a breach, they almost always want them to have a PFI forensics investigation. Well, the card brands don't have a contract with the third party. Bank of America doesn't have a contract with the third-party service provider. So nobody really has at this stage a lot of clout to force them to do a PFI forensics investigation. However, if we've got a merchant that's been identified as being impacted by that particular breach, we do have a little clout. We'll reach out to the merchant or merchants, and we'll reach out to the third-party service provider and do what we can to get them to engage a PFI forensics investigation. Fortunately, I have seen where they are more receptive to engaging a PFI. So that's a good thing.
That's good. All right. Thank you for that. I'm almost concerned asking David for the same question. How is a PFI investigation impacted when there's third-party service providers involved?
Yeah, it increases the complexity to the nth degree. And it depends on where we are in the process when the third-party service provider gets kind of implicated. So sometimes we're working for a single merchant, and they are our client. We have contracts with them, and our investigation, we go through their network thoroughly, and we don't find anything at all. And then we have to kind of pull back, and we're saying, okay, where can the problem be? And as our examination continues, sometimes we'll say, gosh, we think that it might be with this service provider. And in one case that we had a couple of year and a half ago or so, we actually had another case come in that we were working as well, and their systems were clean, and the only nexus was they were using the same service provider. So then we reached out to the card brands and found that they were finding, other PFIs were reporting the same thing, and so the service provider got identified. And then we've had situations where at that point the service provider engages us. And now our job just goes from where we were looking at just a single merchant on what would have otherwise been a pretty simple investigation. Now we have 250 merchants that are in play, and we don't have contracts with them. And so you have the situation where, you need to reach out to them, you need to notify them that there's a problem. Usually when you let them know that there's a problem with their systems, they're pretty receptive to your help. But sometimes, lawyers get involved, and we've seen companies lawyer up. So, in other words, the short answer to your question is when service providers are the issue, it's a mess.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm afraid there's not a lot that can be done about that. It's the nature of it. Thank you for that. Looking at time, we've got some time. Final question. What kind of guidance or advice can you share with the audience to help them, merchants and service providers, prevent getting breached to begin with?
Well, the first basic recommendation is maintain PCI compliance. Work it into your daily routine because it's not a one-time event. The next recommendation that I would do is for merchants to establish and document a data compromise incident response and test it with your employees periodically. And then a final recommendation is that merchants should train their employees on how to identify a phishing email and how to manage it. I've seen several forensics reports come back where the point of entry for the perpetrators to get into the payment processing environment of the merchant and extract credit card data was found to be a phishing email that was sent to an employee.
Wow. It's still that simple sometimes. All right. How about you, David? Same question.
well, first I want to say I appreciate Daniel's answer, because everything he gave are answers that I could have given. So oftentimes that point of entry comes through an employee. So employee education, teaching them how to identify phishing emails, and you can run tests in your organization where you can have your IT group send a potentially suspicious email and see who bites on it, and then that gives you a point where you can educate your troops on it. So be proactive with that. Daniel also mentioned the incident response plan. Test it. So oftentimes the first test of an incident response plan is when they actually have an event. But if you have an annual test of your incident response plan, you're doing it at a time when your resources aren't at risk. There's no jeopardy to your company. Beyond that, like you said, maintain PCI compliance, update systems, apply security patches in a timely manner. So often we see cases where the merchant, if they had just applied a patch, it would have never happened, and the patch had been available for over a year, something like that. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to the council on some upcoming changes that they've engineered for 4.0. In Q1 of 2025, the requirements 6.4.3 and 11.6.1 will go into effect. Those both are regarding actions that you need to take to ensure the security of your shopping cart from the browser side, not from the server side. So many of the investigations that we're involved in right now, the attackers, their entire footprint is outside of your server. So file integrity monitoring, antivirus, those tools aren't going to catch it. Spidering the network isn't going to catch it. You actually need to get in and do a test, a mock transaction, and evaluate all of the scripts that are firing at that point, and look at each of those scripts for any that might be malicious. So, a big shout out on that one. And then the other thing is, if you employ an iframe, it's a good point of security, but don't think it's a panacea. It doesn't cure all evils that are out there. We've done demonstrations on how you can actually breach an iframe if you're not paying close attention to the security around the rest of your network.
Thank you for that. David shared his group shared a demo at the PFI Information Exchange yesterday, and it was really unsettling, how hard it is to find this stuff. I mean, you have to be sitting right there, you have to know what you're doing, you have to be looking for it at the time while the iframe is getting compromised. So, and I'm carrying on for too long now. So I want to thank you guys for sharing your experience, your knowledge, your badassery in the industry. And I want to thank the audience as well for showing up, listening. And I hope everybody walked away with something valuable, particularly the importance of meeting and maintaining security requirements and standards like PCI DSS, P2PE, tokenization, EMV, and so on and so forth. So thank you all for showing up, and thank you guys again. It's a privilege sitting up here with you.
Thank you.